most people don't listen. In fact, I wrote a book on the fundamental importance of listening and how most people don't do that. So instead of listening, what most people do is impatiently wait for their turn to talk, or more often interrupt, anxious to share their next brilliant thought. So my don't do that is don't do that. Stop waiting for your turn to talk. Listen. So as I'm a big fan of David Brooks, who's a New York Times columnist, and he wrote a recent book called How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Deeply Being Seen, and Being Deeply Seen. So as he describes it, you want to listen so hard, you burn calories, you lose weight.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Don't Do That podcast. I am your host, Kelly Waltrich, and I am here today with Jack Sharry. Most of you probably know Jack from his many years at LifeYield, but today we're going to talk about the next iteration of Jack, what he's doing today and what you can expect from him over the next couple of years. So welcome, Jack.
It's great to be here. Good to spend this time with you, Kelly.
Yeah, I always love spending time with you. So tell our listeners a little bit about your journey over the last maybe 12 months and what it's looking like into the future.
Well, I'm going to go back to when I left corporate Landia, which was about 16 years ago. Had spent most of my career at asset managers, insurance companies, wealth managers, and all that kind of stuff. I won't bore you with all that. But joined LifeYield in 2008, and was my first real entrepreneurial endeavor where I had money on the line. I invested. I got involved that way. And for the past 16 years, I've been involved with helping to build the company. I essentially was the chief growth officer, which means I was the business development person trying to get indoors. We did. We succeeded. We got, we got all the big names, which many people know if they follow me on LinkedIn at all, because we do a regular podcast on our end. And then, so that was always the idea. When I originally joined, the idea was that we would sell LifeYield in the next 3 to 5 years. Well, 16 years later, December 10th, we were acquired by SEI LifeYield, what is now called SEI LifeYield, but at the time was just SEI buying LifeYield. They were a client for the past 6 years, so we knew them and got to know them over the year prior to the acquisition. And in doing that, we really got to know them well. They got to know us well, and we started building stuff, frankly, ahead of the announcement. Started, planning and plotting and what we're going to do and how we're going to do it together, and get to know folks. And I have to say, it's about 4 months in now as we do this podcast in late March, and couldn't be more thrilled. I was just on a call with the senior person in our world, Michael Lane, and just talking about, and you and I were just chatting about this prior to getting on, Kelly. I woke up at 4 this morning because I was too excited. I couldn't wait to get up. So I just got up. And so we're very excited to be here. We're doing all sorts of amazing things. We'll probably talk a little bit about that. But what I do in addition to that, and you sort of alluded to it, and we'll probably spend a little more time on this, is I've written a book on that it's entitled Authentic and Ethical Persuasion. I teach that at Babson College, have done so for the past 10 years. We'll get into it, but it's all about listening. And so I'm in the unusual spot of doing a lot of talking here, which I get a little uncomfortable with. And it's like, shut up. But in any event, I'm sure we'll have a robust conversation, as we do when we get together from time to time on Zoom or the phone or Teams or whatever.
Yeah. All right. So I was going to ask you that. I see a spark in you over the last couple of calls that we've had. And like you said, you told me before we got on this call that you woke up at 4 this morning so excited. So what is it? What is the change? What is causing that?
So probably the best way to say it is I'm a real student of our business. I started off not knowing much of anything. early on. I started as a wholesaler way back. I've been around this business over 40 years, so I got some longevity going. And over that time, I've always been passionate about doing more and better business. As a wholesaler, that was my statement to advisors. I will help you do more and better business. That's more business at a better quality of business, and implied, and I would always say it, a better quality of life. That was my commitment. So I'm very mission driven. As I joke with friends, I'm just glad that this industry pays well. But I like to make a difference. I like to really contribute. So it's really been the driver. and that's why I teach at Babson. I'm the president of a not-for-profit board outside of Boston called Hale Education, and we raised $38.5 million over the past 5 years under my leadership. So I'm like a nonstop mission machine about making life better. And then specific to what's going on today with SEI LifeYield is where the reception to our coming together has been phenomenal. So very excited about that. And so everywhere I turn, life is good.
Oh, that's awesome. I feel like, this is so cheesy, but I really love what I do too.
Yes, I know. That's
I
why
really,
that's
that's why
why
we
we
get
sync up.
along. Yes. And I feel like no matter how hard the day before was, I always try to start the day like super jazzed to get going again. And I think
Sure,
sometimes that probably makes my team a little crazy because
sure.
that's just the way. But I am really excited to hear you say that because I feel like life is short and we
Yeah, yeah.
gotta love what we do. We gotta love the people that we do it with, and we gotta be excited about what we're working on.
So I have to interject here. I'm a super fan of you because not only are you doing really incredibly powerful work in my estimation, because I watch intentionally closely, believe it or not, I do. I
Mhm.
pay close attention to what you guys are up to. Um, but the other aspect of all that is that you have, was it 2 kids, 3 kids, 100 kids? What do you got?
Feels like 100. I have 2 toddlers. I have a just turned 3-year-old and a 5-year-old.
Yeah. So check that out, audience of in this podcast.
Oh
Don't. I guess I shouldn't say don't do that. It's too late. But
my gosh.
good for you to do all the good work you're doing in your day job, and then the rest of the many hours in a day that you take care of 2 little guys and
Wow.
gals, whatever
I
you got. What do you got? Boy and a girl?
boy and a girl.
Yeah.
We have an Intentionally Moms channel on Slack, Jack, at an Intentionally, and if you got a glimpse into the war stories of even just before we all arrive at work, it's very entertaining. So
Yes.
we try to keep
Yes.
each other all lifted. But I appreciate that. Okay, so back to you because I don't want the spotlight either. Um, we watched the acquisition and you are super excited about everything that's happening. Are you allowed to tell us? Like, are you allowed to talk about exactly what you're working on? What is the market going to
Sure.
see? How are they going to
Sure.
benefit?
Sure.
Who can get access to what you're building? Give us a little bit of a glimpse into that.
So yesterday, Funfire ran a story, which was sort of our coming out party. So everything I'm going to share is public, and I don't believe there's any constraint, but this will go through compliance at SCI, gladly so.
Deal.
Um, so we'll see if it gets through, but I don't think anything I'm about to say would be problematic. But in any event, so it was a story in Funfire about we'll be the first out with a full blown UMH, Unified Managed Household. A lot of pretenders, a lot of people kind of talking around it or near it or kind of little bit maybe. But what we are building, already have the wherewithal to do it, given what LifeYield can do via API. Sorry for the technical term, but we can do that now. We do a good chunk of it for one of the largest global asset and wealth managers in the world. I don't think I'm supposed to say their name out loud anymore, but in any event, but one of the big ones, anyone who follows me at all knows the name. But the bottom line is that um, we're building it when we have been for the past, frankly, more than 4 months that we've been together, and by the end of the year, we'll have a full-blown UMH. Well, that's underway and exciting all by itself, just because it's coming. And just got off a call just before this call, working with one of our large clients around what we're building, and we have many that are sort of in the queue around this. Is that as we're going forward, we're talking with literally every firm. We've reached out to every firm you can name, and we're having robust conversations with most about how they can play. And that's wealth managers, asset managers, insurance and annuity companies, fintechs, custodians. So in other words, we can work with anyone and everyone because our ultimate aim is to shift from vendor to partner and from um, really trying to just sell stuff and make money to partner with folks to build a capability and ultimately be the utility for the industry around unified managed household. That's our aim. That's our objective. It'll take time. This
Yep.
stuff is not easy. It won't happen overnight, but we're in motion with a number of firms already in terms of that aim. Much more to come. But ultimately, when we connect all the dots, and that is no small undertaking,
Right.
we'll be able to improve outcomes. As EY did a study on our methodology a few years back, many years back, and we improve outcomes by a third for $1 million household.
By a third.
So I don't think that one's going to get through compliance, but the point of that is we improve outcomes significantly by minimizing taxes, by asset location, what we call tax alpha. That includes asset location and tax smart transitions and household level rebalancing and income generation across multiple accounts, all mindful of taxes and how to minimize those. So that's what we're building. That's what's underway. That's why I woke up at 4 this morning, because I just couldn't wait for the sun to rise and I had to get going.
I love that for you. Okay, so a third. I know you were gonna have to delete that everywhere. Your compliance team is gonna be, but I am enamored by that as a marketer who has every company under the sun come to me and tell me they create efficiency, scale, and growth. I'm like, do you?
Really?
How? Come on.
Yeah.
But you really are, and that's an amazing. I mean,
Yeah. This, what's fun about it is it's legit, it's real, it's
yeah,
impactful for anyone that has two accounts.
yeah,
It's designed to improve outcome because we're just avoiding unnecessary taxes just because people don't think about that going in, and then over time buy this and buy that, and there's really no, frankly, rhyme or reason to what they buy. And I'm a good example. Just an example. My wife and I are in the midst of tail end of a financial planning process ourselves, and we shifted to a particular firm that has all the tools. Not surprisingly, they're all tools that our company has developed. And we have put together our own UMH because that firm is not fully connected. No firm is right now. That's where we're going. And worked with a great team. They just did a terrific job in terms of understanding our issues. And something that I'm especially excited about is that in the process, the financial planning process, which I've always been a proponent of, but very different when it's your own situation. And so, as a proponent, my wife and I had to prioritize. And the first thing is, so what's most important to us as we're not going to retire immediately or in the next couple of years, probably 2 or 3 years out, 4 years out, who knows? But the whole idea is that as we go forward, what's important to us? And no surprise, what's important to us is our 4 sons, their partners and spouses, um, and our 3 grandchildren, and we have a pretty good hunch that there's going to be some more. So that's what matters.
yeah,
And all the rest of the mechanical stuff we're doing around minimizing taxes and all that stuff that we talk about ad nauseum in our world. It's not
yeah.
ad nauseum really, but it's this what, the mechanics of it all.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, and everything, all of our decision making is starts with what's most important to us, which came out of this planning process. And now we're going about then managing the money, consolidating the assets, all that kind of stuff to get a better outcome for our children and our grandchildren and who's ever next.
I love that. Okay, so we're gonna get into your don't do that here in a second, but I have one more question before we do.
Sure.
You know me, so you know I'm really focused on how M&A is happening in our space. I feel
Important.
like
Yeah,
I feel like I've been through good and ugly and
I'm sure.
sort of good and okay and everything in between, and I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. There
Yep.
just
Yep.
is. There are
Yep.
leaders that get it and understand the importance of bringing firms together well,
Yep.
with strong communication and strong integration and strong cultural alignment. And then there are some that are doing M&A for the sake of M&A. You
Yep.
seem to have nailed it with this coming together with SEI. If you're getting up at 4 a.m. and so excited and you're building before the documents are signed. So give me a sense of like, what's your secret?
Well, it's not my secret really. It's really a collective secret, not so secret. I'll share it with you. Um, so, a little history on SEI, and I know you have familiarity because you're in the neighborhood, so to speak, and your husband used to work there, all that stuff.
Yes.
So you have a familiarity beyond most. So I'll give you the story as I tell it. SEI was founded 54 years ago. Started as a back office operator for banks. and over time built out additional capabilities, including technology and asset management, and added advisors and then RIAs and did a TAMP, and then a lot of stuff that they've done over time. More recently, they just stood up an alts platform called SEI Access. The prior company they purchased was called Altigo, and that's now converted to SEI Access. They're the largest private credit back office operator in the industry. So, and by the way, I learn stuff like this every single
Every
day,
day.
often from our clients. I was just on the phone with a senior person at the big firm I mentioned and didn't say their name, and he was the one that told me that 80,000 of their clients have their alternative investments processed through SEI. Who knew? I found out from him because I've been learning so much. I'm just getting bombarded with information.
Yeah.
So basically, as all that has come together, it really is that SEI over time built itself out, and it's a very, in my observation, very thoughtful, very smart, very deliberate, very disciplined. So you don't have, there's no surprises. It's a very thoughtful process that I've observed, that we experienced, and as that unfolded, and they learned about us and we learned about them, and so by the time we did the deal, and it took a while, it was not short, it was not fast. By the time we got there, we knew this was a lifetime commitment, to put it in the
Right.
social context, and that we were a great match. And I did not know that going in. So, unlike I watch the news like you and see who's doing what around M&A and so forth, and I think that I've seen more issues than opportunities, shall we say,
Yeah.
across the industry. But they're there. This one was it was a home run in my estimation, because good, honest, smart, thoughtful people made a real business case. That's another aspect of what I find with SEI is they go in deep. They really want to understand what they're buying and how does that fit and where they're going. They have a board that's quite strong, from what I hear. I don't talk before them, but from what I gather, very smart, very very strong. So in any event, so it was. I've been in past lives. I've been involved with M&A. They're not always pretty, and they're not always fun, and they don't always work. So I know what that looks like. But this one really, I could not imagine how it could have gone better.
That's amazing. And you are very humble because I'm sure it was a lot of them being thoughtful. And I think that you and the way you communicate and the way that you listen to people and integrate yourself and learn about, I'm sure that played a very large role in why it's going well as
Well,
well.
probably a little bit, but more importantly, frankly, one of the assets that frankly doesn't have any real value other than it really is a powerful tool is a podcast I do. You've been on that podcast. Tina has been on. Where we have a recording underway with Randy Lambert. So, but that has become a powerful tool and an essential part of our marketing. So we'll probably talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah. All right, Jack. So let's get to it. You know that the premise of this podcast is that we learn more from our mistakes than our wins. So what are we telling our audience not to do today?
So let me frame this up if I could.
Yeah.
So most people don't listen. In fact, I wrote a book on the fundamental importance of listening and how most people don't do that. So instead of listening, what most people do is impatiently wait for their turn to talk, or more often interrupt, uh, anxious to share their next brilliant thought. So my don't do that is don't do that. Stop waiting for your turn to talk. Listen. So as I'm a big fan of David Brooks, who's a New York Times columnist. I've read his books. He's a sort of a sociologist in residence for the Times. And he wrote a recent book called How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Deeply Being Seen, and Being Deeply Seen. Um, so as he describes it, you want to listen so hard, you burn calories, you lose weight. That's how hard he's recommending you listen. So what I've done, going back to 2019 during COVID, looking for something to do, as I wrote a book on this, something I studied going back to 1983. So I was wet behind the ears my first time in a professional sales role. And I got connected to this course. It was held at the New York Hilton under a crystal chandelier, as those are. And there was a gentleman by the name of Dr. Fernando Flores who has a fascinating story I'll get to in a moment, but he taught the course, brilliant, brilliant course. And that changed my life. And basically, what he taught was people, and it comes from Martin Heidegger, the philosopher, early 20th century philosopher. What Heidegger said is that people are always already committed. Who we are is commitment. That's the human species is all that, and there are no other species that that do that are committed in that way. And an example he gave back then was a dog can't be late. Do you happen to own a dog, Kelly, by chance?
I do. I have two pugs.
Okay. And I'm guessing you've not yelled at your dog for being late?
No, never.
No. No, never. Good. Good. Okay. I have had people try to argue with me they have, but that's a whole other matter. In any event, so what Flores was saying is that we humans are human. Our humanness is about commitment. That's who we are. What's it's all about. Heidegger also said something else. All this I learned from him. I've tried to read Heidegger, and I don't know what the heck he's talking about. So these are all the translations from 40 plus years ago when I took this class, is that when we're heard, when people hear us and all that we're committed to, and I'll give you an example. Your commitment is to your business, to your family, to your two kids, your husband, to your partners. I watch how you guys communicate as a team, all in the public square, all online. You guys are very public about it. I love that. Very honest, authentic. So I know who you are as a commitment. That's that commitment I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you show up. It's how you be. It's what you do. That when people talk about Kelly, they said, I can trust her. This is what, by the way, fundamentally what this listening thing is about. The kind of listening I'm describing is listening so hard and so well that I really get you. Now, Heidegger calls it, we come into existence, we human beings come into existence when we're heard. So when you think about that, if somebody hears me, and you've had this experience, I mean, you and I have this experience when we talk. I hear you, you hear me. We want to finish each other's sentences. We have that kind of simpatico. And frankly, and this will bring it back down to earth. I spent the past 43 years working at the craft, the practice, the exercise, the discipline of listening in a very deep way. Brooks calls it a moral posture. I'm listening so hard that what ends up happening, by the way, you're going to tell me some more stuff about yourself than you probably should or could. And I'm going to never abuse that. But
Right.
what ends up happening is, and I'm going to refer to another favorite author of mine, and that is Frances Frey. She is a Harvard Business School professor. I don't think I've talked to you about her. Are you familiar with her?
Mm-mm.
Listeners, check her out. She's got a podcast. She's got books. She's got a TED Talk. Start with a TED Talk. It's 20 minutes of glory. But she's a Harvard Business School professor, has done work with Uber and WeWork and so on, trying to help them do things. And one of the things she talks about, she calls it the trust triangle. And the three prongs of it, if you can visualize it, I actually made a presentation on this at the last MMI meeting a while back. At the top is authenticity, that where you want to come from is being authentic. And by the way, this is my adaptation. She didn't say all this stuff, but it's the basis for how I've employed it. So it starts with authenticity, and the more authentic I am, the more likely the person on the other side is to be authentic back. So it's about having more authentic, deeper, richer, more meaningful dialogue. And all this, by the way, applies to life. It applies to business. It applies to sales. Because remember, the book is Authentic and Ethical Persuasion. And I purposely don't have the term sales in there.
Yep.
That's quite different. And then the bottom right of the triangle is empathy, which is really listening. It's connecting, understanding, understanding the history. And then the third prong of the triangle over on the lower left, if you're following my graphics, and that is the narrative. She calls it logic. I call it the narrative. And as you know, because you've worked with John Connors, he's all about the narrative. He understands the narrative as well as anyone I've ever met. And I've learned a lot from him. And the narrative is about telling compelling stories, telling stories that are consistent with what is authentic, what I've heard and understood is important to you, what you're committed to, And then the narrative, as we're looking to advance, is how can I forward the discourse? How can I advance the cause? How can I help the person on the other side achieve what they're trying to achieve? So I've
Oh,
talked too long. I'll stop here.
no, that's good. Oh my gosh, there's so many good nuggets there. And I'm signing up for anything that's I'm gonna burn calories for sure. But okay, so as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, we move through our days and we have more to do in our days than hours most
Yep.
days. I don't
Yep.
know if you feel that way. I know a lot of people in and
Yep.
around this industry that I talk to on a daily basis feel that way. And I think sometimes slowing down to like truly make sure that your mind is fully focused on what's in front of you feels near impossible. At least it
Yep.
does to me.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and we talk a lot about it intentionally. Like if you're in a meeting, you need to be in the meeting. Like your
Yes.
other
Yes.
stuff needs to be off. You
Yes.
need to be paying attention. The person on the other line needs to feel like you're engaged. So like
Yep.
help.
How do you
I
do?
mean, yeah, how
How
do
do
you
you do
do
that?
it? Because I know for me, it's a struggle sometimes.
Yeah. For every one of us. So I've been teaching at Babson for the past 10 years. And the book came out halfway through, I think, 2019. So, um, and a lot of it was stuff I was saying. And I used to train. And when I was way back, I was head of insurance and annuity sales at Dean Witter. It's now part of Morgan Stanley. And so
Hmm.
I used to teach the training. I used to teach this. I called it back then the elements of persuasion. And I taught all the trainees. This is back when they were doing 100 trainees a month, every year for many years. This was in the late 80s. And I would teach this about listening. And so personally, what's worked for me throughout my career, whether it was the wannabe financial advisors, many of whom are still friends, to working with the Babson students. I work with both the undergrad and MBA students. Basically, what I did is I got to talk about it and demonstrate it, and so it was a reminder. And to this day, whenever I'm in a conversation, literally every time I'm in a conversation, I say to myself, "Shut up." Listen. No,
Yeah.
I say it, shut up. It's a practice. It's a discipline.
Hmm.
Because as I'm exemplifying here, I could talk. I got some stuff to say. I've been thinking
Yeah.
about this stuff.
No, no.
But what I find, particularly putting it in the business context, I'm sure there are many people here that are in business development and relationship management and so on that are tuning in,
Yep.
is that when I'm in a conversation, uh, and I'll give this all this is in my book and it's online if anyone wants to check it out. And I also have some LinkedIn blogs where the stuff is you can find the short versions of what I'm talking about. But when I'm talking with someone, these are the basic questions I learned from a financial advisor in Bradenton, Florida, probably 25 years ago. He learned it at a dude ranch. It's location, vocation, relation, recreation. So where are you from? So anytime I meet someone, I ask where they're from for no other reason to see if there's maybe some off chance that
Connection.
we have a connection. That's all I'm looking for connection. That's what I'm really looking for. And then we talk about that. No, or you're from the King of Prussia area. Tell me about that. And then so location, then vocation. What kind of work you do? And I know all about it intentionally. I do my homework before I talk to clients. I find out how they show up in LinkedIn and all the rest of that stuff. So location, vocation, relation. Tell me about your family. I know you got 2 kids. You got a husband. He used to work at SEI. I don't know all that stuff. Maybe that'll get cut. But in any event, point of all that is I'm listening and I'm getting to know you and I'm forming a picture. I'm getting to know you. And frankly, the other thing that's happening, because I'm doing it authentically, this is not an interrogation. This is not a gotcha. I'm genuinely interested. I want to underscore this is about being genuine, about being real. And then the final is what do you do for fun? Which we never get to because you don't have much time for that. And so,
No.
anyway, you get the picture. And
Yes.
so the listening is a discipline. And we humans seem to be thrown, as Heidegger would call it. We are thrown in such a way that we don't do that naturally. In fact, back to the original don't do that. The don't do that is don't wait for your turn to talk or interrupt. Listen, be present.
Yeah.
Put away the device.
Oh my
Check
gosh.
out what they have to say. Find out what matters to them. Pursue it.
Yep.
So one last thing, and I'll try to shut up. So my clientele are senior executives across the industry. There is a CEO of a company that is a client of ours. One of my favorite human beings, brilliant. Again, can't say the names these days. And we have a meeting coming up April 15th, and she's not sure exactly what the meeting is. But we've been working together now for the past 7 years, I think probably. Um, and we've built up such a rapport. I knew her as the chief growth officer of her company. Brilliant success, just wonderful, wonderful person. And what I've always sought to do, and she's a good example of this, how can I add value to what she's trying to achieve? I know what she's trying to achieve. I know what her objectives are. She is all about growth and doing it the right way. So I've done everything I can to help her do that. I've referred her to people. There's all sorts of ways that I do that. I'm looking to advance the discourse. I'm looking for her to achieve a better outcome in her life. And guess what? I can call her up and say, we're going to be in Minneapolis. Oops, probably shouldn't say that either, but we're going to be in the Midwest, and we'd love to meet with you. And we have a meeting. And now in another week or two, I'm going to write to her and tell her what we're meeting about.
That's
you gotta,
a level of trust for
Yeah.
sure. So, Jack, do you feel like the ability to listen the way that you're telling us to listen comes with building your own confidence? Because let me just tell you what's going through my head is
Sure.
I feel like there's, when I think of my own career, there was definitely a period of years where I thought I had to say something smart for people to know I was smart. Right. And now I am much
I
more
get that.
confident
Yep.
so listening feels easier to
Yes.
not have to be the one talking all the time. And
Yep.
I watch sort of maybe my more up and coming peers sort of going through that same
Sure.
process. Do you feel
Very,
like
very
confidence
normal.
very much plays a role in your ability to
Mhm.
listen better?
It goes both ways. I'm not sure it's a chicken or egg thing. I didn't start way back when as a wholesaler as a very confident person. In fact, uh, a story I'll share. When I was after the sales course, I went out in the field and I was a wholesaler of annuities, and I didn't know how to spell annuity. I didn't understand it, and I was out and I had my boss riding shotgun, as we used to say, with me, and I'm we went to back then it was Payne Weber office in Hartford, Connecticut. My boss is watching me, and I'm talking my fool head off. I handed out 20 brochures, had 20 conversations, and I'm thinking because I learned the pitch, I learned the story, I learned the product, and I thought to myself, I'm brilliant. He's gonna just love this. So we go to lunch, and we sit down. He says, "So, what'd you learn today?" And after scrambling around, I finally said, I can't think of anything. He says, "Well, you're exactly right. You didn't learn anything because you didn't ask any questions. How are you going to learn anything unless you ask questions?" So he gave me a homework assignment. And for those dear listeners, if you're willing, and I recommend you do this, my job was to go home that night and not make a declarative statement for the first hour with my wife, and to do that the following 5 nights. And the exercise was to listen and ask questions. So to continue the story, I get home, kiss my wife hello, ask her how was her day. So she starts to tell me. Now, one of the things you'll notice, those of you who suffer from this wanting to interrupt and talk all the time, I kept thinking about all the brilliant things that I wanted to share, and that what she was saying was of less interest to me. But I really had to listen because I didn't know what the next question would be unless I paid attention. Which is certainly part of the whole big part of the exercise. So about 5 minutes into it, my wife says, "So tell me, why are you asking me so many questions?" And I had to think fast. I said, "Why do you ask?" Because my job was to ask questions. I came up with a
Yeah.
quick one. And she said, no, what's going on here? So I had to admit, my boss said I was a lousy listener. She agreed. I was crestfallen. But what it did is it just taught me, and I recommend you do this with spouse, partner, friend, colleague, is is it's a practice. It's something you work at. And I've worked at it for literally 43 years. This is something I think about every day. And to your confidence question, I had little to no confidence to start, which is
Right.
why I talk so much, because
Yeah.
I at least knew the pitch. I knew what to say, but I didn't know how to interact. And then over time, I just kept getting better and better at it, frankly, because I kept working at it. Lots of mistakes, lots of dumb things I did, all that kind of stuff occurred too. That's part of the trial and error of learning about life. And now where I find myself at the tail end of my career, I've never been more confident, more assured, and I got nothing to prove.
Right.
And frankly, that's why I spend as much time as I do sharing this with, especially with younger folks. I do a lot of mentoring around the industry around all this.
So funny. I go home every day and I ask my kids, what did they learn today? As just like a normal thing parents do.
Sure.
But you're right. We should do a little gut check and do that to ourselves as well, because it's so easy to move through your days and not be aware. I'm having a self-reflection moment here, Jack.
Yeah, I get it. But this is a good point. So here I am pontificating about listening. And if my wife were on the call with me, she would say, yeah, but it's not quite the same at home here. She's been known to say that frequently as I'm pontificating about listening.
Yeah.
And it's our habit. It's Heidegger calls it being thrown. We're thrown like dice. That's just how it's, that's what comes up is we have a lot to say. We want to say it. And frankly, the degree to which you can just really listen, get people understand what they're trying to achieve, help them get there. That's the other part, is what can you do to contribute to advancing the discourse? All that's important.
Amazing. All right. For everyone listening, what we're not doing today is waiting for our turn to say the next bright thing we have in our head. We are taking the time to listen so hard that we burn calories. And I will never forget that, Jack, just so you know. And I have loved every second of this conversation with you. I feel like we could talk forever. Guys, Jack mentioned a lot of resources, his book, some other books that he has written. I think you mentioned a white paper. So to the extent you'll let me, Jack, we'll link all those resources along with the recording of this podcast so that you can access everything that he talked about. And we can all practice our listening. And I'll let Jack report back on if I'm getting any better at this over time as well.
Yes, you are already better. One more thing for our audience. If you do the homework assignment, I would love a note. You can just connect with me on LinkedIn. And would love to hear, because I've written a book on it, but I'm going to write the next version of the book, which includes a lot of things that I've learned since writing the book, and a lot of which I've shared here. So I'm starting to collect stories around people that listened and how that went.
Awesome. All right, drop Jack a line, connect with him on LinkedIn, and drop him a line about what you learned about your spouse, maybe that you didn't know happened that day. I'm going to have to go home and do that, because Steve Waltrich listens to this and he's going to give me a hard time when I get home. I ask our kids how their day went. I don't know how often I ask him, so I will do better at that as well. All right, Jack, this was great. Thank you so much for your time. And like I said, guys, we'll make it so that you can access all the things that Jack mentioned during this podcast on the Don't Do That website.
Great.
Talk to you soon.
Kelly, it's been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, subscribe to be notified when new episodes become available. And please consider giving us a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. This podcast is sponsored by Intentionally, a financial services growth engine design consultancy and agency. If you want to learn more, please email me at kelly@growintentionally.com. Thank you again for listening, and check back to hear what we're not doing next.
The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Kelly Waltrich. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.